All right, so I think the name should already be in, but let's do a buzzer check just to make sure. So why don't we start with Warren Mirza? You're supposed to say the name.
Warren John Fowler, Warren Alyssa, Warren Martin, Grayson Nathan, Grayson Alex, Grayson Hunter, Grayson Johnny.
All right, and the captains are Alex and John Fowler, or Alyssa. Sorry.
He was pointing.
All right. So, coaches, are we ready to begin? Players, everybody? All right. So, good luck to both teams as we begin round 2 with toss-up number 1. As x becomes infinitely large, evaluate the limit of f of x equals quantity, 2x plus 1, close quantity, divided by quantity, square root of quantity, 4x squared plus 1, close quantity, close quantity.
Warren Mirza,
Infinity.
Incorrect.
Grayson Johnny,
0.
Incorrect. 1. Toss-up number 2. He entered politics after the Civil War and was a congressman from and governor of Ohio before his election as president. He undertook a tour of the western states after his re-election and ended the tour with a speech at the Pan American Exposition. What president was assassinated by anarchist Leon Czolgosz in Buffalo in 1901?
Grayson Alex,
That's correct. Your bonus number 3. In some tales, these creatures were Persephone's handmaidens, but were cursed for not preventing her abduction. The talents of Orpheus allowed the Argonauts to journey through the territory of these creatures unharmed, while in the Odyssey, Odysseus survived them by being bound to his ship's mast after his men plugged their ears with wax. Name these creatures who lured sailors to their death with a beautiful song. That's correct. Toss-up number 4. Owing to the nature of negative feedback, this disorder is usually diagnosed based upon low TSH levels, though other indicators include weight loss, anxiety, and tachycardia. Its most common cause is Graves' disease, an autoimmune syndrome that often results in goiter. What endocrine disorder occurs due to oversecretion of T3 and T4, the thyroid hormones?
Grayson Alex,
Hyperthyroidism.
That's correct. Your bonus 5. Plays in this medieval literary genre composed the Chester, Wakefield, York, and Endtown cycles. They depicted biblical subjects like the Last Judgment, Adam and Eve's fall, Cain's murder of Abel, and the creation. Identify this genre, the counterpart of miracle and morality plays.
Mystical play.
Incorrect, Captain. Incorrect, a mystery play. Toss-up 6. Consider a hemisphere with a radius of 3 units. In cubic units, find the volume of the hemisphere. 18 pi cubic units. Toss-up 7. His gang terrorized the Midwest from September 1933 through July 1934 and epitomized the gangster era. During their spree, his gang robbed several banks, staged 3 jailbreaks, and dominated newspaper headlines. What Indiana-born gangster was shot by an FBI agent outside Chicago's Biograph Theater on July 22nd, 1934?
Grayson Nathan,
Jordan Babyface Nelson.
Incorrect.
Warren Mirza,
Jesse Jackson.
Incorrect. John Dillinger. Toss-up 8. Originally, this word referred to the portion of an ancient Greek theater in which actors changed their masks and costumes. It evolved from a small wooden hut into a 2-story stone structure flanked by wings with 3 doors for entrances and exits. Give this word, which eventually named the background before which performances were enacted.
Warren Alyssa Background.
Incorrect.
Grayson Alex.
Scenery.
Incorrect. Scana. Or Scana. Toss-up 9. S.J. Singer and Garth Nicholson proposed this model as an alternative to the Davidson-Danieli sandwich theory after analyzing the results of freeze-fracture microscopy. It emphasized the roles of amphipathic proteins and movable phospholipids in membrane structure. What model proposes that the cell membrane consists of a flexible phospholipid bilayer interspersed with integral proteins?
Warren Alyssa Plus Pudding.
Incorrect.
Grayson Alex.
Modern cell theory.
Incorrect. That's the fluid mosaic model. Toss-up 10. This author presented his novels, Arthur Mervyn and Edgar Huntley, as the title characters' memoirs.
Grayson Alex.
Brown.
That's correct. Your bonus 11. Consider the ellipse with equation x squared divided by 49 plus y squared divided by 25 equals 1. In units, what is the distance between the foci of the ellipse?
2.
Incorrect. Captain?
Edison Rizzo.
5.
Incorrect. 4 square root of 6. Toss-up 12. Shared derived characteristics of this clade of animals include the formation of a coelom through invagination of the mesoderm and radial cleavage. It includes several invertebrates such as acorn worms and sea cucumbers, as well as all living vertebrates. What clade includes the echinoderms and chordates and is characterized by the formation of the anus from the blastopore? Deuterostomes. Toss-up 13. The first formal American department for the study of this field was established by Albion Small at the University of Chicago. Individuals who laid the groundwork for this field include Marx, Weber, and Durkheim. What is this discipline which deals with the development, structure, and functioning of human society?
Grayson Alex.
Socialism.
Incorrect.
Warren Mirza.
Department of Health and Human Services.
Incorrect. Sociology. Toss-up 14. The notes C, E flat, and G form a chord described by this term. In Western music, there are 3 types of this scale: natural, harmonic, and melodic. And in the natural, the 3rd, 6th, and 7th.
Grayson Alex.
Minor.
That's correct. Your bonus 15. This Carthaginian-born playwright was taken to Rome as a slave, but his master there educated and freed him. His plays, The Mother-in-Law, Phormio, The Woman of Andros, and The Brothers, inspired the later comedy of manners genre. Name this Roman comic playwright second in influence only to Plautus.
Terrence.
That's correct. Toss-up 16. Consider the function y prime equals 3x squared minus 6x plus 2. If y equals 1 when x equals 0, find an expression for the antiderivative of y prime. X cubed minus 3x squared plus 2x plus 1. Toss-up 17. Taq polymerase, a heat-resistant version of this enzyme, is used in the polymerase chain reaction to amplify a DNA sample. What enzymes are responsible for the 5' to 3' synthesis of DNA during replication?
Grayson Alex.
Polymerase.
Incorrect. DNA polymerase. Toss-up 18. This architect used a design divided into smooth, starburst patterned, and cornice areas in his design of a tomb for Carrie Eliza Getty. A namesake building currently houses part of the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and exemplifies his work in the Chicago style. Named as architectural partner of Dankmore Adler, with whom he designed St. Louis's Wainwright Building.
Grayson Allen.
Sullivan.
That's correct. Your bonus, 19. This battle took place at a location with a name meaning the Hot Gates. It took place at the same time as a naval battle at Artemisium, and a decisive moment was the betrayal by Ephialtes. Named this battle the first conflict in the second Persian invasion of Greece.
Thermopylae.
That's correct. Toss of 20. This character flew to the Himalayas to collect herbs that healed the wounded in his friend's army. When his tail was set on fire, he used it to burn down Lanka after crossing the straits separating India and Lanka in one leap. Who was this commander of the monkey army in the
Grayson Nathan.
Incorrect. Who was this commander of the monkey army in the Ramayana? It is Hanuman or Hanuman. Toss up 21. Convert 3 pi over 5 from radians to degrees.
Tom.
108 degrees. Toss up 22. 2-word answer required. These molecules serve as ligands in complex ions by forming dated covalent bonds with a metal cation. One example, ammonia, has a non-bonding pair of electrons that enables the formation of the ammonium ion, and is thus consistent with the Bronsted-Lowry definition. What molecules have the ability to donate electron pairs and include all bases?
Grayson Allen.
Hydrogen donors.
Incorrect.
Tom.
Lewis bases. Toss up 23. This architectural element can support a canopy, roof, or gallery, any part of a building that requires open space below. Present in Roby House and Falling Water, it forms the basis of some...
Grayson Hunter.
That's correct. Your bonus 24. This case's ruling declared the Judiciary Act of 1789 in conflict with the Constitution, and thus void. The foundation for this case came when John Adams appointed 42 midnight judges on his final day in office. Named this U.S. Supreme Court case involving the 4th President of the United States, who was serving as Secretary of State at the time.
Marbury v. Madison.
That's correct. Toss up 25. This dramatist of Deirdre of the Sorrows and The Well of the Saints co-founded the Abbey Theatre. His time in the Aran Islands inspired In the Shadow of the Glen and Riders to the Sea. Identified this Irish playwright who accidentally incited riots with the Playboy of the Western world.
Grayson Allen.
Singe.
That's correct. Your bonus 26. Convert the decimal number 31 to base 8.
I designate Jonathan.
Hesitation. Captain?
No, that's it.
37 or 37? Toss up 27. These geologic features consist of pheneritic rocks such as granite and diorite, owing to the felsic or indeterminate nature of their original magmas. Examples include the Black Hills of South Dakota and the Sierra Nevadas of California, the latter of which was exposed by tectonic uplift. What intrusive igneous rock formations are at least 40 square miles in area and are formed from the aggregation of multiple plutons?
Grayson Allen.
A multi-pluton.
Incorrect.
Tom.
Batholith. Toss of 28. This art movement, which developed partly as a reaction against abstract expressionism, was closely related to conceptualism. Saul LeWitt, Frank Stella, Kenneth Noland, and Donald Judd were among its leading artists. What was this mid-20th century art movement which used industrial materials to produce work free from symbolism and emotion?
Tom.
Minimalism. Toss of 29. This city on the Rhone River figured greatly in the history of the Roman Catholic Church. It is the city where Pope Clement V lived during his papacy in the 14th century, as well as 6 Frenchmen who followed him. What is this city whose so-called anti-popes later reigned? Correct. What is this city whose so-called anti-popes later reigned during the Western Schism? Avignon. Toss-up 30. This dramatist tackled conventional morality and genetic syphilis in Ghosts, his tale about Captain Alvin and his son Oswald.
Grayson Allen.
Gibson.
That's correct. Your bonus 31. Express your answer as a fraction. If a paired die is tossed 2 times, what is the probability that at least one toss shows a number that is a factor of 6? Incorrect, Captain? Incorrect, 8 nines. Toss-up 32. This artist's surrealist period, exemplified by slow swirl at the edge of the sea, gave way to multiforms, blurred shapes made from layers of paint washes. He gave some of his later paintings numerical titles or referred to them by the color palettes he used, such as orange, red, yellow, and 4 darks in red. Who was this foremost exponent of color field painting?
Grayson Allen.
Incorrect. Mark Rothko. Toss-up 33. This businessman, who himself held more than 350 patents, earned his wealth primarily through weapons manufacturing in Northern Europe. Upon learning of his legacy as a merchant of death, he set aside his fortune to the Royal Swedish Academy of Science to be distributed.
Grayson Allen.
Nobel.
That's correct. Your bonus, 34. This dramatist, whose namesake theaters are located in Seville and Madrid, was nicknamed the Phoenix of Wits. Among his more than 400 surviving plays are The Dog in the Manger, The Widow from Valencia, and The Knight from Olmedo. What writer of more than 1,800 plays ushered in Spain's golden age of Baroque drama?
Felix Lope de Vega.
That's correct. And toss-up 35. This economic and political movement is most often associated with the Scramble for Africa and similar efforts. It began in earnest about 1500, but after World War II saw a steep decline, often.
Grayson Hunter.
Imperialism.
Incorrect. Saw a steep decline, often as the result of wars of liberation. Under what policy did Europe, the U.S., and Japan conquer and exploit large areas of the world? Colonialism, which I think are essentially the same, except it doesn't have it on the paper.
Good job, guys. Your team.
Sorry I took so long on Gibson, but that's took me such because and I was like, oh, it's a play. So I said because every time I hear ghosts, I think the ghost about it. Is it? So that's good. Yeah, so I was like, I never studied it. I never studied it. I know I made it, but I just studied it. No, 3 over 7 is 3 7. No, 3 7 was
Okay, Justin, Amanda, Cecily, you all come in, and Alex, and the rest of the room. Thank goodness that was just a pre-calculus question y'all didn't get.
It's too slow enough for you. Whatever. Never claimed me good at math.
The foci.
Oh, I don't know foci.
You just get rid of those daggone things, don't you?
didn't know the folk I was in pre-con.
Johnny, be good.
What?
What?
They had that question of a monarchy. Is it normal to sing a Christmas song in minor key?
I don't know.
Hunter,
Okay.
stay close.
We are.
Write down notes. You too, John. Learn how to do probabilities. No, you don't. You didn't get it. I didn't know what factors were. I figured it out.
He was there the whole time.
I had switched buzzers with Hunter earlier because they were mixed, so I just swapped.
Okay, we're supposed to have 35 questions.
Why don't you do a buzzer check? Amanda? Cecily? Sure, buzzer check it. You sure, Martin?
Holy moly.
No, we're all the same. Sorry, I was looking at her. I don't know what you asked me.
Just a buzzer check.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry.
No buzzer check.
No, I didn't do it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, 10.
Johnny, how many points do you think the substitutes are going to get? I don't know. I don't think he can. I'm just a JV player. He's in practice.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so we got the question 76, 75?
30, question 70.
We start at 41 on this, don't we?
We
Second
go
half?
30. Oh, yeah, because we didn't do 36 through, yeah.
Right.
Right, we started 40.
Oh,
So just, if I need to sub people in, just
Oh.
make sure that they don't see the question beforehand.
Oh, golly, gee whiz, yeah.
do you mean to move? Do you mean to move?
No,
No, I can move.
no, it's fine.
Questions are on.
Oh. I mean, really? I think I should have a name
Don't eat
right
them.
now.
Just pick the numbers. Sarah's eating one.
My gosh, do you all have like is this Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory Sans chocolate? Okay.
Mr. Nation? Can I call her?
I'm eating, so I still have food.
You wanna do the spotting? Is that what you were asking?
Kid. Someone apparently doesn't know how to put a bag in the box, right?
Well, I wanna,
Coaches,
hey, Hunter,
those of you keeping score, is it agreed there? Good.
Don't eat those, Miss Salone. He had his mouth all over that bag. Okay, so are you really gonna already ate those? You're
They already ate those.
All right, are we ready to continue?
you are. You got to be.
Am I reading all right, the page, all that?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you, Cecily. All right, so, looks like captains are the same. So we will begin the second half. We go from 41 to 75. All right, so when I read that, just be aware those are the numbers. All right, so toss up 41. Expressing your answer in square units, find the area of the largest isosceles triangle that fits inside a semicircle of radius 1 unit. One square unit. Toss up 42. This compound forms a complex with nickel to purify the element in the Mond process. Hemoglobin has a much higher affinity for this molecule than
Grayson, Alex.
incorrect. Hemoglobin has a much higher affinity for this molecule than oxygen, resulting in its toxicity. Identify this gas produced along with water in incomplete combustion reactions, made up of a carbon triple bonded to oxygen.
Warren Mirza.
Carbon monoxide.
That's correct. Your bonus 43. This dance element determines the dancer's focus as well as the relationships between dancers and their environment. Additionally, it dictates size, pathway, level, and direction. What is this element, which can be personal or general? That's correct. Toss up 44. This huge monolith is considered a tor, an isolated mass of weathered rock. The first European to visit it was surveyor William Goss, who named it for a governor of South Australia in 1873. Named this monolith, which has been revered by Australia's Aborigines for generations. That is Ayers Rock or Uluru. Toss up 45. This literary device appears in 1 Corinthians 15:55. O death, where is thy sting?
Grayson Alec.
Apostrophe.
That's correct. Your bonus 46. Find the global maximum of the graph defined by y equals 4 minus the absolute value of the quantity x plus 7. That's correct. Toss up 47. This concept is considered in full by Bohr's complementarity principle, but only half may be considered at one time. This theory was confirmed in the Davison-Germer experiment and generalized to all matter in the de Broglie hypothesis. Name this concept, which states that quantum objects have both oscillatory and matter-like natures.
Grayson Alec.
Wave particle duality.
That's correct. Your bonus 48. This dancer, who once partnered with Anna Pavlova, performed the male leads in Giselle, Sleeping Beauty, and Swan Lake. Michel Fouquet choreographed Les Sylphides, Scheherazade, and Petrushka specifically for him. Name this dancer who, as a choreographer, created The Afternoon of a Faun and The Rite of Spring.
Nijinsky.
That's correct. Toss up 49. This man's first nature essays, Natural History of Massachusetts and A Winter Waltz, appeared in The Dial, a magazine he co-founded. His better-known essays assert the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation and That Government is Best, which governs least.
Grayson Alec.
That's correct. Bonus 50. Variations on this legislation have been proposed as World War II drew to a close to prevent the same problems that occurred 26 years earlier with veterans returning from Europe. It provided for educational opportunities, mortgage opportunities, and other benefits to veterans. What was this legislation, which was extended to veterans during peacetime in 1966?
The WPA.
Incorrect, Captain?
Medicare.
Incorrect. The Servicemen's Readjustment Act or the GI Bill. Toss up 51. Find the length of the interval of real numbers satisfying the following inequality. X squared is less than 7x plus 18. 11. Toss up 52. This film director has done 3 biographies of U.S. presidents, JFK, Nixon, and W. His 2 Academy Award-winning films were based on his experience in the Vietnam War, while his most recent film examined the leaks orchestrated by a former NSA employee. Named the director of Platoon, Born on the 4th of July, and Snowden.
Grayson Alec.
Smith.
Incorrect.
Warren Mirza.
Ren Greenwald.
I'm sorry?
Ren Greenwald.
Incorrect. It is Oliver Stone. Toss up 53. This environmental disaster occurred in the wake of a harsh winter storm, which induced the eruption and leakage of dioxins from a subterranean dump. Its ultimate cause was the sale of a contaminated property to the Niagara Falls City School District, which later led to the creation of a federal superfund in 1984 for the cleanup of hazardous sites. What environmental disaster resulted from the Hooker Chemical Company's burying of chemical wastes in a canal?
Grayson Alec.
Erie Canal Crisis.
Incorrect. It's the Love Canal disaster. Toss up 54. This medieval epic introduced the Holy Grail theme into Germanic literature. Its hero realizes God's true nature with the help of an elderly hermit, correctly performing his duties to the Grail King, and thereafter being admitted to the Round Table. Identify this Wolfram von Eschenbach poem.
Grayson Alec.
Parzival.
That's correct. Your bonus 55. This military organization is found in all 50 states. Troops from one based in Harrodsburg were on the Bataan Death March after being called to active duty. What military organization is often called to active duty for service or to help in times of natural disasters?
National Guard.
Correct. Toss-up 56. Find the measure in degrees of an exterior angle of a regular nonagon. 40 degrees. Toss-up 57. This disagreement caused Pope Gregory VII to flee Rome for safe quarter with Robert Guiscard. The Concordat of Worms ended this conflict, during which Henry IV made a walk to Canossa after he was excommunicated. Name this religious controversy caused when the Pope denied the right of temporal rulers to choose and install members of the clergy.
Grayson Alec.
First Great Schism.
Correct.
Tom.
It's called the investiture controversy. Toss-up 58. This group, formed in Geneva in 1954, now consists of 21 European countries and Israel. The birthplace of the World Wide Web, it was directly involved in the discovery of anti-hydrogen as well as the W and Higgs bosons. Named this scientific research group based on the French-Swiss border, which runs the largest particle accelerator on Earth.
Grayson Alec.
CERN.
That's correct. Your bonus 59. This monarch was originally estranged from his family due to the illegitimacy of his birth, but with the assistance of Dingiswayo, he was made the leader of a growing empire on his father's death in 1816. Although he was a successful military leader who defeated the Undwandi people, he generally preferred diplomatic means to resolve conflict. Assassinated by his half-brothers in 1828, who was the South African monarch of the Zulu kingdom.
Shaka.
Correct. Toss-up 60. This novelist wrote of a Jewish grocer and a young Gentile thug in The Assistant. He earned a Pulitzer Prize for The Fixer, his story of a...
Grayson Alec.
Alma.
That's correct. Your bonus 61. Find the sum of the proper positive divisors of 64.
Seven.
Incorrect, Captain?
8.
Incorrect, 63. Toss-up 62. This mountain range lies between the Sierra Nevadas to the south and the Coast Range to the north. Among its tourist attractions are the Lava Beds National Monument and Crater Lake National Park. What range, which includes Mount St. Helens, has its highest peak at Mount Rainier?
Grayson Alec.
Cascades.
Correct. Bonus 63. This musical era saw the creation of the mazurka, prelude, nocturne, and lieder. Composers manipulated instruments' expressiveness, found inspiration in folk tales or poems, and exalted their respective nations. Identify this era of Mahler, Verdi, Grieg, and Mendelssohn.
Romanticism.
That's correct. Toss-up 64. This novel's narrator deserts his army post after accidentally killing a soldier who refuses to free an ambulance from the mud. Lieutenant Frederick Henry falls in love with Nurse Catherine Barclay, but both she and their child die at the novel's conclusion. Give the title of this World War I era novel by Ernest Hemingway.
Warren Ellis. The Red Badge of Courage.
Correct.
Grayson Alec.
For whom the bell tolls.
Incorrect. A Farewell to Arms. And toss-up 65. This phenomenon arises from the linear nature of the Schrödinger equation and was first empirically observed in Thomas Young's double slit experiment. Schrodinger explained it using the analogy of a cat trapped in a box with a randomly releasing toxin, much as light behaves as both a wave and a particle until individual photons are trapped. One principle of quantum mechanics states that multiple quantum states can exist simultaneously.
Grayson Dustin,
Flux.
Incorrect.
Warren Martin,
Incorrect. It's called quantum superposition. Toss-up 66. If x is a geometric random variable with parameter p equal to 1/3, what is the mean of x?
Tom,
3. Toss-up 67. This musical, set in Berlin in 1931, plays out against the backdrop of the Weimar Republic's collapse.
Grayson Alex,
Cabaret.
That's correct. Your bonus 68. This novel's title orphan spends part of his youth at a British military school. Before and after his schooling, he accompanies a Buddhist Lama on his search for the River of the Arrow. Identify this novel about a would-be spy in British India, written by Rudyard Kipling.
Spy.
Incorrect, Captain?
Daniel Book,
Incorrect. Kim. Toss-up 69. This people wrote their codices on paper made from the bark of fig trees. They were highly skilled in astronomy, used zero.
Grayson Alex,
That's correct. Your bonus 70. This plant adaptation probably emerged alongside stomata and vascular tissue during the Ordovician period, as it is essential to life on land. It is synthesized by epidermal tissue and is especially prevalent in conifers and succulents due to their shiny coatings. What hydrophobic waxy layer covers epidermal plant cells and prevents dehydration?
Plant skin.
Incorrect, Captain?
Cuticle,
That's correct. Toss-up 71. The three sides of triangle XYZ have lengths that are integers. Two sides of the triangle have lengths of 5 units and 8 units. In units, calculate the sum of the smallest and the largest possible lengths of the third side of the triangle.
Warren Mirza,
16.
That's correct. Your bonus, 72. This painter integrated the effects of morning snow and misty sun in his series of paintings showing haystacks. He used the pond in his garden at Giverny as the inspiration for a series of more than 250 canvases showing the tidal aquatic plants. And this French impressionist who painted many works showing water lilies. Captain?
Monet.
That's correct. Toss-up 73. This poet was imprisoned for making pro-fascist radio broadcasts during World War II.
Grayson Alex,
Ezra Pound.
That's correct. Your bonus, 74. This process is usually downstream of a cracking unit that breaks down crude oil into smaller hydrocarbons. This refinery unit is referred to as SAAU or HFAU, depending on the catalyst of sulfuric acid or hydrofluoric acid. Give this process used to recombine isobutane and light alkenes to form a high-octane gasoline component.
Anti-fracking.
Incorrect, Captain?
Fracking,
Incorrect. The process is alkylation. And toss-up 75. This two-word phrase refers to what some historians consider a small 5-year civil war in the U.S. It began when pro-slavery and free soil partisans moved to a new territory and immediately clashed. What name was given?
Grayson Alex,
Bloody Kansas.
Incorrect. What name was given to this conflict, which took place in a territory west of Missouri from 1854 to 1859? Bleeding, Kansas.
I'm just joking. I know you told me.
All right, and that is the game.
You did that twice, Alex. Twice. No, I did it the first time. It's on.